Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Happy birthday, America. Here we go. I promised to do a quick video on the In the Hoop Bun Twisters. And this is one that I made last week. I've got several in different sizes, but I went ahead and did this one last week before we got everything released. You can see this is done completely in the hoop. There is a satin stitch around the edging. I did use cutaway stabilizer. You could use tearaway, but if you launder it, the tearaway is going to crumble up inside and you're going to have a bunch of little lumpies in there. You could also use heavy water-soluble stabilizer hooped on the inside as well. But again, on a hot, sweaty day, you're going to have sticky buns in your hair, not on your plate. So I chose to use a medium cutaway. You can trim it after the fact, and you would have just a little bit of your stabilizer on the outside if you're very careful. I always trim mine with my little curved edge snips. I don't think you can see that too well here, but they're curved edge snips. See those? Okay, they're the little pinchy ones. I call them lobsters. I don't know what they are. I don't remember what they're called technically, but I call them lobsters. Anyway, so this is what I'm going to do. I already have my color stop one, which is the placement, stitched onto the stabilizer, and I have my top layer of fabric pinned down. I am using a directional pattern of fabric, so I have to be careful on how I lay it out if you want it to be somewhat even. I know these things are going to get twisted up like crazy, but I have some of this really awesome fabric that I made my kitchen curtains out of a couple of years ago when we bought the house. And I had some extra. My sister, one of my 4 sisters, gosh, there's so many of us. One of my sisters loves this kind of retro style with me. She has a big, long Clydesdale horse mane of hair, huge and thick and beautiful. And she is wearing a sun visor most of the time to try to keep it out of her face. So I'm going to try to make her this so she can keep it off of her neck, or at least a little while off of her neck. So I am making the biggest one that I can, which is the 8x12. I did have a larger one, a 9x14 hoop tested last week. I did get my pictures back. It is enormous, and if you guys didn't see the post about it, I talked about it being able to hold up Crystal Gale's hair. So for those of you who don't know who Crystal Gale is, Google her. You will see what I mean by Crystal Gale's hair. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this out. I will be doing this video in 2 or 3 segments because you don't really need to see the tedious trimming of the applique sections of sorts, because this is made like an applique and also sort of like a key fob where you're putting another piece on the underside of the hoop after you finish the top, and you're going to marry the 2 pieces together. So you don't need to see me trimming all that, but I will absolutely show you the most important part. So color stop 1 is done. I added my fabric. Color stop 2 is next. I'm going to let that stitch and show you what I'm talking about. I do have this in several sizes now, and I've been asked to make some mini bun sizes and some double bun sizes. So those would definitely be made in a 5x7 or even a 4x4 hoop for the little tiny girls or little tiny buns or piggies. The double bun, if you haven't seen that, Google it. It's pretty awesome. That's used a lot in dance or skating competitions where there's a lot of movement and the need to keep the hair really tight. So what they do is make a small bun in the middle, then make a second bun around the outside. It sort of looks like Princess Leia's hair or a cinnamon roll, sort of. It's really cute. So if you pick some really cute fabric, you could look like you have cinnamon rolls in your hair. Talk about another take on the sticky bun part, right? So color stop 2 is going to stitch all the way around the outside and the center part, and that is the tack down, so that when you trim this, your fabric stays in place. So it's going to stitch a double stitch all the way around. That's just for added security to hold your fabric in place while you trim it and move it around, because it is going to get some movement as you're taking it off and on the, or you're taking the hoop off and on the machine. So color stops 3 I'm gonna pop this off of the machine for just a quick second so you can see what I'm talking about. So directional fabric, you can see that I have my pattern on the diagonal because I angle these in the hoop to give you more room to take full advantage of the stitch size. Now you can see my hoop is much larger. It's an 8 by 12 hoop, but just looking at it visually should be 9 by something or other, 9 by 13 or 14, but that's not true because you've got to give room for your hoop to stop before it hits the front, or your needle to stop before it hits the hoop frame. So the actual hoop size itself is larger than the hoop stitch area. So please just study that. Anyway, I've got my fabric laid out in an angle that's going to match my cutout. So if you're using directional pattern, please be aware of that, especially things that are all going the same way. So if you had a scattered pattern, for instance, like this sewing one I used last week, some of them are going right and left, and some are going upside down, some are going top to bottom. It just depends. So this one is perfect for this kind of design because it is truly a scattered pattern, and it doesn't matter which way you twist and turn this thing. This one, I love the fabric. I did not iron it, so forgive me for that. I'm just doing this as a quick stitch. I love the fabric. My sister loves the fabric, and she asked me to make her one. She does not do embroidery yet. We're trying to convince her that she needs to try. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take the pins out of this and put it back in. One of my pins was a little too close to the stitch line for my liking, and it made a tiny little dimple in the stitch line when the needle guard hit that spot. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but I have a tiny little dimple here. Let me turn it's in the green leaves and right on the edge of this yellow. It doesn't have the perfect curve like the rest of it does. That's because the needle guard hit the head of that pin. I had it a little too close. I didn't have it pushed away far enough. So I hit it a little too close. Now when we trim this thing out and we have the satin stitch around the edge, you're not even going to see that. So I'm going to pop it back in, and we're going to stitch now what's going to be the channel for the wire. So color stock 3, let me follow along in my software here. Color stock 3 is going to stitch 2 rows of stitching. And again, this is the channel that's going to hold the wire when you're all done. So if you guys followed this journey at all, I was having trouble trying to figure out how to get the wire through without it being in the way of my needle, without it being in the machine. Now I had a way, and it was completely safe to run your stitches with the wire already in your design, but it caused you to have to snake the wire through the back of the design through a tiny slit cut in the stabilizer, and it was a booger to push that wire all around those curves. So Vicki and another member of the group, I'm so sorry I can't remember your name, I'll have to look it up. Vicki and another member of the group both stated I should try a folded back, a split back, or an envelope back, an overlap of sorts. And that's exactly what I did on the other one. Not on this one, but I did it on the bacon one. So, this is the bacon one. This is the front side, the top. This is the back side, and I'm not sure if you can see it here. You see where the fabric is folded? This overlap is to a channel where the wire goes through. So that's what I'm going to end up doing. So I have an overlap. It's on the underside, or what you could twist up to your hair. You won't even see it when it's all on. So right now this is stitching a bean stitch for the channel, and then it's going to stitch color stock number 4 is also going to stitch after I add that. Okay, so when this is done, I'm going to pop this off the hoop, trim out my outer edge. You could leave it and trim it all out at the same time. Either way is totally fine. You can trim it out at the same time that you're trimming the back piece after you put it in. Or you can trim it after this step. It doesn't really matter. But I am going to pause the video, do a little prep work, and then come back with a second video. I will merge them, so there might be a break through the magic of cinema. So this is going to be now ready for color stop 4. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here, and I'll be back. Okay, I have trimmed out most of it, as you can see from the hoop. I left a little bit of it on this side so you could actually see me do it. It is sewn to the cutaway stabilizer that's still hooped. So honestly, this is kind of awkward for my arm angle, but you get the drift here. You trim really close to the line. And remember earlier when I said my pin hit the, or my needle plate hit the pin, I'm just going to trim a little bit on the outside of that because the machine is actually going to stitch the satin stitch where it's supposed to stitch. So I want to make sure that I have my fabric there. You don't want to trim right up to the stitch line, but you want to trim very close. So if you're doing the satin stitch, you want to trim very close. If you're doing the raw edge, so you can have a frayed edge using pinking shears or just plucking the threads to make a raw edge, then you don't really need to trim that close because you're going to end up with little straggly frays anyway, and that's by design. So this one's actually a satin. The satin, here we go. I've got most of my little threads out of the way. I've got a few little in here, but that's okay. So the satin is going to go around the outer edge on the last step when we're done, and it's also going to go around on the inner piece here. I'm going to trim that piece up right there. That's not quite close enough. But that's how you trim it. And I went ahead and did this while I had it off the hoop. So I'm also now going to be taking the other piece, and remember I'm using directional fabric. So this is the hoop, how it sits in my machine. If you notice, just the way I positioned it, it's backwards or upside down here, looking at the hoop. So I'm going to take my same fabric and I'm going to orient it the same. Okay, so I have my fabric going upside down, and all I'm going to do is add this to the back, wrong side touching the stabilizer. So I'm going to tape that in place and then I'll come back and pin it. Okay, I have the front piece done. Now I'm going to do the back piece. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I have 2 pieces of the fabric, more than enough and a little excess to cover the back piece. Okay, there are finished measurements, so I would just add, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or an inch around every side. If you're doing the back piece, I would add that much again to allow you to do a double fold, and you're going to tuck under the edges like this so you don't have any raw edges where that overlap is. So I'm doing a double. It's going to be like this. So for now, again, I didn't iron this, but for now, I'm just going to hold this down, put a little pin in it until I get it in place, do a good finger press, and tuck it in there really good, and I'll come back and show you how I have it on the hoop. Okay, I have one piece taped down. Ignore that. I have one piece taped down with the double fold, as you can tell, to give a nice clean edge here. I have the other piece just kind of pinned at the moment. I'm going to overlap them, but I'm not going to overlap them more than maybe 1/4 of an inch. You need to be able to maneuver that wire through there, and if you overlap it much more than that, if at all, I mean, you could even almost just butt the seams and have it overlap by 1/8 of an inch. If you have it any more than that, it's going to be very difficult to get your wire through when you're done. So I'm going to secure these 2 pieces in place and come back and stitch the back for you. Okay, I am back now. I have both pieces on the back secured from the front with pins. As you can see, there is a slight overlap. Get that in my camera view. Slight overlap here. This is one piece of fabric. This is the other piece of fabric. That's going to give you the channel to pass your wire through. So I'm just going to pop this back on. We're going to stitch color stop number 5, which is the tack down. It's the tack down. I'm sorry, it's not the tack down. It is the, let me go back one. Color stop number 4, because I'm a little ahead of myself. Color stop number 4. Here we go. Color stop number 4 is the tack down for the whole piece and for the center. It's going to marry the back to the front, and then you are going to then run the channel for the wire. Again, the reason for 2 rows of stitching is for a couple of reasons. One is because it's just pretty to have a double stitch or twin stitch line. Number 2 is it gives a little bit more stability to the channel for the wire. That channel is going to get a lot of use if you wear these things often. It is going to help hold your fabric in place better. It's going to keep the wire a little bit more secure so it doesn't come loose or come out of there before you're ready to take it out and put a new piece in. So again, to go back to the finish on this, this one is a satin stitch. There is also a raw edge version. You can use some of those beautiful scalloped or triangular shaped scissors, or you can just, I don't know if you guys used to make fringe on your blue jeans or not, but you could certainly do it that way as well. Just cut it with straight edge pieces. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about. Got a little scrap here. So pretend this is the bottom of your blue jean, and you can cut them just like this. We used to call jean fringe. You can do that all the way around if you want. Now, the problem with that is it will get prettier as time goes on. You want to just pull the bottom few bits of it out to give it a little bit more fray. You're going to end up with some thread in your hair the first few times you wear it, but you know, after a while, and you can probably totally fray it before you even put it on, but you can see what I'm talking about. That can actually be the edge of your design if you're doing the raw edge. You can also use pinking shears, the normal triangular shaped ones that we've all seen, that are used in tailoring and stuff like that. But if you guys remember also, I found a whole bunch of different sizes of pinking shears that are scalloped edge that I use on a lot of my napkin holders, probably most of my napkin holders and covers. So that would kind of be pretty on this as well. There is one I want to try, and that is to sandwich a pretty piece of lace in and have a lace on maybe some beautiful white satin or other kinds of fabric, and use that for like a wedding veil or an updo, a prom. You can have them in different colors. Lace is beautiful, and I'm going to test one with lace in between the layers of the front and back of this. So this is going to stitch color stop 5. There we go. And it's going to make the second row of stitching here around the wire channel. So once this is done, I'm going to take it off the hoop, trim the back pieces around, and do the satin stitch. So I'm going to take a couple of still shots and insert them in this video so you can see when that's done. Okay, I am back now, and I have a couple of still shots made, but I'm just going to show you here. This is the channel that the wire is going to go through. So I can put this all the way through to the corner with my chopstick here. You can't really see it at this angle, but there is a slight overlap there. I left this one off so you could just see. The overlap is just about 1/4 of an inch. Now, it is going to take a little work to get the wire to come through, but it's very easy to do once you get the wire through, to wrap the ends together and then snake it right back through that hole. So I'm going to pop this back on the hoop. I'm going to stitch out the final, which is color stop 6, and this particular one is the satin stitch all the way around. It is about 6,000 stitches, so it takes quite a few minutes, even on my new machine. This is a very large design, and it's just going to take quite a bit of time. So I don't think you guys need to watch all of that, but I will certainly come back whenever it is done and show you how to put the wire in. Okay, so everything is stitched out now. I have the final stitch. I got a couple of little scraggly threads I'll get rid of, but this is the front piece. This is the back, on the back of the hoop, and here are the channels. This was the fold over area that you're going to pass the wire through, where the stick is going right now. There is a little bit of an overlap, so you're going to have to maneuver this a little bit to get your wire to come through, but I'll show you how easy that really is. So when you get your wire snaked through, which I'm going to cut this out here in a minute and do that, when you get your wire snaked through, you're going to fold this like this so that your wire, let me get this one, you're going to fold the piece like this where your overlap is, so you can get the wire in and out of that spot. Now you're only going to have to do the wire fishing on one side. This just happens to be because we did an overlap or an envelope style back. You've got a channel on either side, so you can actually start it on either end that you like. Doesn't really matter. So if you ever go to remove this wire, you're just going to have to maneuver this in and out. This one is a little longer than I anticipated, so my ends are here and here. It overlaps a little over an inch, about 1.5 inches actually. I'm not going to overlap this one that much, but you can overlap it, wrap it with floral tape, electrical tape. Don't wrap it with anything if you don't want to, but I would suggest wrapping it with something just to keep the ends sort of tamed while it's being used. This is completely machine washable when you use the cutaway. Now you can use tearaway, as I stated earlier, but if you wash this, the tearaway over a couple of washes or so will kind of ball up on the inside as it just falls apart. Wash away, or heavy WSS wash away stabilizer, is okay if you want to use that. Again, sweaty heads and laundry will make that a sticky mess, at least through one washing, until it's all out of there. This is not like freestanding lace. You don't want to keep that stabilizer in there as it stiffens. You do want to wash it out if you use water soluble. I choose not to, but you can use whatever you want, whatever works best for your application. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one out, trim it around. Again, I am going to use my curved edge snips. If you can see those curved edge snips, very close to the satin stitching, being really careful not to clip them. So you can, I don't know if you can see this edge or not. Turn my light here, maybe. Here we go. There is a little bit of black stabilizer that sticks out. That will not really matter. If anyone is that close to your hair, I hope it's your significant other or your hairdresser then. So, anyway, I'm going to do that, and I'll be back in just a minute. I just want to show you a little bit of how I do this. Again, because of this camera angle, my arm is at a weird angle, but I am just barely outside of the satin stitch line. If you can see that, just barely. These snips are sharp enough that I can really just hold it and then move my fabric, still hooped onto the stabilizer, still in the hoop, to give it some extra stability while I do this. Now obviously the trick is not to snip the satin stitching. You guys can do this however you want. I've even had people tell me that they've run a barbecue lighter or even one of those foam heat tools that you use to get rid of foam bits in 3D puff embroidery. You can run that around the edge of this, and really all it's going to do is just get rid of those little frays around the edge. So that's the edge of the satin. You can see a little bit of the white if you look close enough. And again, like I said earlier, if somebody's that close, they better be significant other or hairdresser. So you can also take a fabric marker and run an edge of that if you don't really want to see the white, whatever you want to do. Again, this is cutaway. Various reasons I use it, but mainly because it is completely machine washable now. You can take this just as it sits without the wire. You can even wash it with wire, but I would make sure that it's wire that does not rust. Anyway, I'm going to finish trimming this out, but basically it's coming out very clean, and then I'll come back and do a quick video on how to put the wire in. Okay, so now I've got it all taken off of the machine. This is the front, and you can tell the front by the double row of stitching. That gives you stability, but it also gives a little bit of a decorative element. The back of the stitching, the back of the in the hoop bun twister has the little channel for the wire. So what I want you to be careful of when you're looking at wire, I buy this. It is 18 gauge wire. I got this at my local Walmart in the home improvement section. If you get it at Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere like that, it's totally fine. 18 gauge works for me. Some other wire may work for you. You may want two smaller or thinner pieces of wire wound up together, two lengths of it, so you will have a double one. Whatever works for you. I just found that the 18 gauge goes through the channel very easily, and it twists and holds in the hair very easily. So I know you can't see it, but there's a mannequin head over here that's had that same holder in her hair for about 2 weeks, and it hasn't even moved. Now, obviously, she's not out doing gymnastics or running or anything, but it is holding up very well. It's not loose at all. So you need to make sure that you get uncoated wire. There are some that are sold at places like Home Depot or Lowe's that have a coating on them, and it is kind of an oily coating, and I don't know what its purpose is other than maybe to rust proof it or to glide through some sort of fencing tool, make it a little bit better. It's baling wire of sorts. But this one is not coated, so it's not going to make your fabric greasy or oily or anything. Amazon and most craft stores also sell 18 gauge wire in the jewelry making section and stuff like that. So what I did was just cut a length off with my needle nose pliers. Mine actually have a wire cutter on one end. Some do and some do not. Mine happens to. I just took the end, pinched it in between, and curved it in to make this little hook so that the end of the wire is not poking out. So I'm going to feed that through the back, and it's going to go straight into the channel. It is going to take a little bit of maneuvering to get it around the curve. 18 gauge is easier to work with than the thicker. And I don't know if you guys ever made like any sewing projects with elastic in the waistband or a cinch sack, anything with a drawstring, but sometimes, I know my mom and my grandma always did, and when I did with elastic or whatever, I put a safety pin on the end of it and snake that through with the safety pin. So that's basically what you're doing, is you're fishing it through this channel. So as you can tell, I'm around the first two curves. So I'm just going to work my way around. Pretty soon, it's going to be so much in here that I'm going to need to help hold it in place, and I've got some Wonder Clips, or off-brand but still Wonder Clips, and I'm going to use those to help hold it in place. Now I have made my way around to the other side. This is the overlap, and if you remember, I made the seam that it is a double fold over seam, so there is actually a little pocket in there. So my wire just got stuck. So you just have to kind of maneuver it around until it goes past that. So mine's past it. You'll be able to feel it when it goes through there. I am going to have to hold this in place now. My Wonder Clips are in the bottom of my basket over here, so if you give me just a second, I'm fishing in the blind. Okay, so I have my Wonder Clip. I'm just going to hold this in place so that I can straighten this piece out over here. Now I'm just going to fish the wire through there, and I am just going to straighten it out a little bit as we go through. So you can see that I am now almost all the way to the next curve. So right now that Wonder Clip is holding my wire in place. I'm just going to come through and let that Wonder Clip loose. There we go. And just going to keep fishing this around. So I've straightened out my fabric until I got to the other curve. And I'm going to hold it with the Wonder Clip one more time over here. That Wonder Clip just keeps it in place. I'm going to push that through and straighten that back out so I can make sure that I have the right shape, that the wire is perfect in there, and it is. That channel is wide enough that it gives you a lot of flexibility as far as the size or the thickness of the gauge. It also gives you some maneuverability so that when you are twisting it in your bun or in your hair around your bun, it gives you some play. You can make it pretty tight in there. All right, so I'm going to let that Wonder Clip go again and continue to fish that around this last curve. So these little clips act like a third hand for me, and I don't have to have my husband in here trying to do this with me. Now, remember earlier I said, depending on how much you overlap, let me straighten this out again. Depending on how much you overlap, you may have to maneuver your wire a little bit. So I am just going to feed that through. Okay, so it's back in there. Now see how much excess I have? That's really okay because I need a little bit to overlap. Just like on the other side, you want to be able to get past the little fold, the faux seam, I guess, the fold over that covered up the raw edges of the fabric. There we go. Now, the idea here is to get this end of the wire, the one that you fed through, to come back up through this fold. One easier way to help with that is to actually bend your wire so that your fold is here. That's going to give you a little bit of advantage when you're trying to snake that wire through. So my wire is under there. I just got to get it to come back through that opening. All right, so remember I said it might take a little bit of tussle. I'm sorry, I'm off camera, but this is a bad angle for me to try and work this when I need both hands. Okay. You should not have to snip any of your fabric. If you do, maybe your overlap is too much or it's just really stuck in there, you can use some liquid stitch or some seam tape to close it back up. That will help you tremendously to not have your fabric unravel around that wire. All right, where are you? Here you are. Now I got the end of my wire. Make sure that it is through there. It is. Now my wire is past the fold. So now I just want to bring it back up out of the fold. Okay, so I'm going to bring the wire back up, wrap it and overlap here, put some floral tape on it, and then straighten out my design. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so I got both pieces of wire now sticking out of that fold. Okay, this is too long. I don't want that much. So I'm actually just going to push that back in a little bit. And I'm going to bring this one closer to it. It is going to be, this is how I do it. Now, if you have a better way, please share, because I'm always looking for new ideas. I take this and make one twist. One. Not two or three, just one twist, because you don't want a whole lot of bulk in there. So that's going to then make your ends be pointed in the opposite direction. Okay. Okay, so now that's the leading edge that I started with when I went all the way around. I'm going to take this other piece, and I only did that so I could have some leverage to pinch it. Okay, so if you can see, I have now twisted that piece. I'm going to take it out of there for just a second so you can see. So it's made a twist there. When you lay it flat, you want to make sure that you didn't bunch up your design, that your wire is firmly placed in there, but it's not like cinching your design. So now I have an overlap of about probably 1/2 inch. So I'm going to take my floral wire and just wrap around that edge. So remember I said that I knew my length was too long. So I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to curl over that one edge again. So this is how I do it. I pinch the edge of the wire and I make a curl. Just like that. You can see that now. And then I pinch the curl closed. Don't pinch your finger, but you pinch the curl closed now. So now I have 2 curls, one on either end. Okay, now this one is the one that I led with. It is now bent backwards. I'm going to flatten it just a little more. There we go. So now I can wrap it around this with my floral wire, and I don't have to worry about it coming undone. Again, if you guys have an easier way, please share. This is just one way to handle it. I'm sure there are numerous ways, so please, I would love to see your ideas. I appreciate it. I'll be back in just a minute after I get the tape done. Okay, I have my overlap wrapped with the floral wire, and as you can see, I did bend my bun twister a little bit to help me out. Now I'm going to work this back into the holder. So I'm going to flatten this piece back out. It's going to take a little bit of push, a little bit of pull on the other side, and it is fully seated in the channel now. If you want, you can take I'm using the blunt end of my chopstick, pushing that back around, making sure that it is completely in the channel and not sticking out, and it is not. So now I have a fully encased wire. It does have the thickness where the wire was wrapped around itself here. That's okay. Way okay. So just, guys, whatever you want to do, twist it up, do whatever. It is done completely. You can even go back in here if you want a little bit more trim work and get rid of the excess. Again, some people have used a barbecue lighter or a cigarette lighter, or even the little heating tool that you use to get rid of foam bits in 3D puff embroidery, and just pass that around the edge of your satin stitch. If you do happen to snip your satin stitch, you can use Fray Check. You can use liquid stitch, which I have, and I just don't have it in front of me right now. And that will seal where your thread snips occurred. But anyway, this is it. This is the 8x12 bun twister done completely in the hoop. The wire is done after everything is finished stitching and cut out, and pretty easy maneuver. This one's going to my sister in Louisiana. Her name is Rena. Hi, Rena. Anyway, just have fun with these. They're so versatile. You can pick any fabric that you want. Any pattern, you can just mix and match and do whatever you want to. So, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks.